Mr. Levinson, I'm a huge fan of your work. I love
Oh,
Euphoria. I've watched it so many times, so many different episodes again and again. I've actually had moments where I thought how cool it would be just to be a background character who happens to double cross Ali and get his butt kicked in an episode. That's like my ultimate fantasy.
that means that I feel like Ali can kick some ass is my instinct. But that's very sweet of you to say. It means a lot to me.
Well, I will tell you, I did message Coleman on Twitter, and I asked him, what should I ask you? And he came up with something a little bit surprising, but maybe not quite as surprising now that I think of it. You said I should ask you about being a dad, which I have to imagine with your schedule has to be quite a challenge with everything you got going on.
Um, yeah, I mean, look, I think being a parent at any time with any, I just think being a parent in general is a challenge. Um, I think I wouldn't have been able to write Euphoria if I wasn't a parent. And in fact, I know that to be true because I tried to write it for probably 15 years, different incarnations and um, versions of it. And I think it's only after you really are in that position where you know that you don't have any control over this person that you love and care about, and you can see the good in them, and you hope that they carry it with them. It's there's a certain helplessness that I don't think I clicked into um, beforehand, and I thought was an interesting way of looking at it because I had only really sort of seen addiction and that stuff from my perspective as as a son. And so I think the being a parent really it changed something.
Well, I have two kids of my own, so I can relate to
Wow.
what you're saying. They're little still, but I get where you're coming from 100%.
How old are they?
How old am I? I have a son named Henry, who's turning 5 on the
Oh,
18th, and I have Charlie, who is 8, going on 16, depending on what opinions that come
yeah.
out of his. He's quite a pill sometimes, but yeah, I get where you're coming from on that. But
I have a 4 year old. Is
well,
so
you know my
similar age.
pain.
Yeah, I know exactly what's going on. Yeah.
So, in terms of your work, it seems over the years, the theme of the human condition keeps coming up. So, my first question, as we transition to Malcolm and Marie, is: do those stories excite you as an artist?
In what sense? What do you mean?
I mean, it's just like you're the work you're doing in those when it pertains to the human condition with addiction, love, and it just going through the growing pains of becoming an adult. It's inspiring. It's inspired. It's inspired material. I mean, I just it seems like you it's in a you go places that many other artists, writers, etc. don't tend to go. You're not afraid.
Right.
There you go. You're just never afraid to go there, and that's why I find your work so appealing.
So that means a lot to hear. I look. I think at the end of the day, I the reason I love storytelling is because it has the ability to create empathy for people you may never come across in life. And I'm always kind of fascinated by how complex and layered people are, and how often they upend whatever kind of uh, feelings we had about who they might be, um, beforehand. And so I don't know. I mean, I think so. I think I'm always sort of I'm curious about the motivation of actions. I'm curious about uh, just the internal life of human beings, and trying to find a way. I think as I grow and as a filmmaker, and I become more interested in how I can reflect that inner world visually, and with and in terms of its form.
We'll get to the visual
Does that
part.
make sense?
It makes
Yeah.
perfect sense, and we'll get to the visual part because I think Malcolm and Marie is a very visual film for a specific reason. But I do want to begin by asking, first of all, Malcolm and Marie is scintillating. I love the film, just love it, love it, love it. But the origins of the film, how quick did it come together? And was John David Washington and Zendaya just, they had to be the two for this film, I have to imagine, when you wrote this. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so we had been shut down on Euphoria um, a day before starting season 2, and so I went back home. I was talking to Z on the phone because we were prepping for season 2, and I think about after about 4 or 5 weeks, we started to think, well, what can we make something? Can we do something safely? Can we shoot something in her house? And um, and so shortly after that, I think look, I think it's funny because looking back on it, there's the way it came together, it becomes something else. But in the beginning, ultimately, it was just an exercise. Can we tell a story with just two actors in a house? We don't have any special effects. We don't have any props. We don't have any of the bells and whistles you would normally have on a production. And can you tell a story that feels cinematic and interesting and engaging with just the bare minimum? And so I started to think about what could be sort of an inciting incident for this relationship to kind of start to unravel. And I had remembered that I remembered a moment where I forgot to thank my wife at the
Oh,
premiere of a movie. And now we never had a fight about it, but I felt such an immense amount of guilt because of how instrumental she was to that process, just in terms of the notes and the feedback and our life in general. And so I thought, well, that would be a fascinating way to kind of jump off into this relationship. And then as I started to write, it's sort of like a kind of like a Socratic dialogue in a way where it just tries to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And so I wrote it. There's no structure to it. There's no form. There's no 3 acts. There's maybe a midpoint, but that's it. And so I wrote the first 10 pages. I called Z, read it aloud to her. She was excited. I said, the only other person I can think of is John David Washington, who I had seen in Monsters and Men and Black Klansman. And I'd worked with his sister Katia as a producer on a number of projects. So I knew him enough to cold call him. And I said, look, I'm writing this movie. You're the only person I see in it. Are you interested? He said he was interested. And it just kind of, it went from there. I called Z back. I said, I think he wants to do it. She said, did he say yes? And I was like, well, not like technically. And she was like, well, if it's not technically a yes, then he's not in. And I was like, oh, fuck. All right. Okay. I got a right to get that yes. And that's sort of how it kind of came together. It wasn't, I don't know. I didn't overthink this piece that much, as odd as that may sound. I just wrote
well, you,
and
you you
got there.
spoke to it in the film, and I've got to get to the end here because I know you've got other people to speak with. And thank you so much for your time, sir. I really do appreciate it.
No, this has been great. Yeah.
Now, you say in the film, critics in general, people who watch them sometimes tend to overthink it, and you just basically said the same thing. You didn't really overthink it. You just wrote, okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's beauty to that. You don't shy away from silence. You show the whole picture, and it's just a powerful experience. So I just wanted to say, I hope you're not too busy around March or April because I think you're booked at a couple of events. I don't want to jinx anything right now. This is a top 5 film, and really just masterful work on your part, and especially on, as you would say, Z, and
Yeah.
John David Washington. So you have a lot to be proud of, and it's been my honor to speak with you.
Likewise, Dewey. This is really, I really, even in this short period of time, really actually love talking to you, and I hope we can do it again soon and longer. Because it feels, it doesn't feel like 10 minutes does it justice. I'd love to talk more.